Ah, society loves a story, doesn't it? A nice little package. A man with a suit, a tie, a house with warm lights, and of course, a woman by his side. That's the image they sell you. That's what they feed you over and over again, until your silence feels like failure, your solitude feels like sickness, and your peace, they call it loneliness. But what if I told you that man who walks alone, that man without a girlfriend, isn't broken, isn't sad, he's just different. A solitude, that uncomfortable word people whisper like it's a curse, like being alone is some kind of disease. But what if it's not? What if it's the antidote? You see, a man who chooses to walk alone, he's not lost. No, he's just not walking with the herd. And that's what scares them. Because it's easier to believe that someone alone must be broken than to admit he might just be free. You ever notice how quick people are to shove you into someone else's arms? You need someone, they say. You should get out more, they smile. As if your worth is stamped by who's holding your hand. But maybe, just maybe, some men don't want to be held. Maybe they want to breathe. Maybe they've seen what hiding behind a pretty smile costs. The loss of self, the slow erosion of identity, the performance. Oh yes, the performance, pretending everything's perfect while dying on the inside. And you think that's better than being alone? See, there's a difference between being lonely and choosing to be alone. Loneliness is a void, a cry. But solitude is a choice. A man who chooses solitude isn't running from love. He's just not willing to settle for the discount version of it. He's not desperate to fill his space with noise just so he can escape his own thoughts. No, he sits with those thoughts, stares them in the face, lets them scream, lets them bleed. Because he knows if he doesn't face himself, no one else truly will. People don't get it. They see him walking alone and think he's missing out. But they don't see the strength it takes to resist the easy fix, the quick affection, temporary escape. Everyone's in a rush to be loved, but nobody's in a rush to be whole. Nobody wants to do the hard work of becoming enough for themselves before they try to be enough for someone else. But him, the man who walks alone, he's doing that work quietly, relentlessly, and it burns. Oh, it burns, because there's no applause for this kind of journey. No likes, no heart emojis, no validation, just silence, just self. And that's the real test. Can you live without the claps? Can you breathe without the echo of someone else's approval? Can you build without someone watching? Most can't, because he understands something the world forgot. Real strength isn't in who loves you, it's in how well you love yourself when no one else is around. You think he doesn't want connection? Of course he does. He's human. But he's not here for surface-level intimacy. He's not here to play house with someone who doesn't even know their own soul. He's not interested in being someone's emotional crutch or their escape from boredom. He'd rather sit in an empty room with his integrity than share a bed with someone who doesn't match his frequency. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. That's discipline. And oh, how they hate that discipline, how it threatens them, because it's easier to mock the man who's alone than to admit they envy his peace, his control, his refusal to conform. He doesn't chase anyone because he knows he's not for everyone. He doesn't lower his standards because he knows his value. He doesn't fear being misunderstood because he's finally started understanding himself. And when the world calls him cold, he just laughs because they don't know what warmth he's been cultivating within. Not flashy, not performative, just steady, strong, silent. And while they're out there chasing temporary highs and confusing chaos with love, he's becoming something they won't recognize. Not a lover, not a partner, not a player in their little romantic circus, but a force. A man shaped not by how many hearts he can win, but by how many battles he can fight inside himself and still rise calm, composed, and whole. Validation, that sweet little drug everybody's hooked on. They don't even realize it. They're just chasing it like rats in a maze. Likes, compliments, attention, tiny little crumbs of significance thrown at them by people who barely know their name, and oh, how desperately they crawl for it. But not him. No, not the man who builds himself without it. He doesn't need the applause, doesn't crave the spotlight. He's not standing in front of a mirror hoping someone tells him he's enough, because he already knows he is. Funny how uncomfortable people get when a man stops seeking approval, when he stops adjusting his tone, his walk, his damn existence just to fit their expectations. He becomes unpredictable, untouchable, unshakable, because you can't manipulate someone who doesn't need your praise. You can't control a man who's not hungry for your smile. He's dangerous in a world that teaches men to be obedient through approval. A man like that, he's a glitch in their perfect little system. They say you're supposed to achieve just enough to be impressive but not intimidating. Be strong but not too strong. Be confident but not too independent. Be ambitious but not so ambitious that you outgrow the cage they built for you. But this man, he's not playing that game. He's building something real, something internal, something they can't see, but he feels it growing every damn day. While others are out there decorating their shell, he's fortifying his core. And the best part? He's not doing it for anyone else. Not to attract a lover, not to please his family, not to be clapped for by strangers. He's doing it because he refuses to live a life that belongs to someone else. He's not just building muscles, he's building character. He's not collecting achievements to brag about at dinner parties. He's stacking discipline, grit, self-respect. Things you don't see in Instagram posts but feel in your bones when life hits you hard. He knows the difference between looking successful and being solid. He's not chasing aesthetics, he's building armor. Not the kind that shines, the kind that protects. And while others crumble at the slightest rejection or criticism, he just stands there, calm, collected, unmoved. Because his worth was never up for negotiation in the first place. He didn't need someone else to declare him valuable. He crowned himself. It's amusing, isn't it, how uncomfortable people get when you don't flinch in the face of their silence. When you don't panic because no one's watching. That's when they start to whisper. He's distant, he's arrogant, he's cold, but they're wrong. He's just free. Free from the need to be seen. Free from the addiction to validation. And in that freedom, he becomes something terrifying, self-contained, complete. A man who isn't trying to fill a void because he took the time to build something in its place. It's not that he's emotionless. He feels deeply. But he doesn't let his emotions run the show. He doesn't need someone to constantly tell him he's doing great just to keep going. He keeps going because it's who he is. Because his path was never about approval, it was about evolution. And evolution, it's lonely, it's brutal, it's silent, but it's real. He's the kind of man who wakes up early when no one's watching, trains harder when no one's cheering, learns more when there's no certificate, works deeper when there's no reward, because he knows that in the end, all that external noise fades. And all you're left with is the man you've become when no one else was around. And he's proud of that man, not because others said he should be, but because he damn well earned it. Isolation. Now that's a word people run from, like it's a disease. They treat it like punishment, like some kind of cruel exile from the circus of connection. But what they never tell you is that solitude, it's a forge. It burns, yes, but it reshapes you into something sharper, something quieter, something that doesn't need to shout to be heard. You see, a man alone isn't always lost. Sometimes he's just refining, reconstructing himself piece by piece, without the noise, without the masks, without the distractions clawing at his skin. Most people can't sit still without a voice echoing in their ear or a screen flickering in their face. They're terrified of silence, because silence doesn't lie. Silence is a mirror, and when a man stares long enough, he starts to see all the versions of himself he's been running from. The broken parts, the unfinished stories, the battles he never dared to fight. But the man who stays, who embraces the void, he's the one who learns how to speak to his own soul. They think solitude weakens you, makes you strange, bitter, disconnected, but no, solitude is where the strength is born, not the kind of strength that throws punches or lifts weights. I'm talking about the kind that can hold its own when everything else crumbles, the kind that doesn't depend on a lover's reassurance, a friend's presence, or a society's applause. It's the strength of self-clarity, the strength of facing every demon, every regret, every bleeding thought, and not looking away. People spend their lives entangled in others, hoping to be completed. Like they're missing a puzzle piece that only a girlfriend, a partner, a warm body can fulfill. But what if, just what if, that emptiness isn't a missing piece, but a doorway, a threshold into becoming something more than just half of a couple? What if the man who walks alone isn't broken, but chosen? What if he's been given the sacred chaos of being forced to find his own center? There's a calm that comes when you stop needing to be held, when you stop craving soft words in the night, when you realize your own presence, your own breath, your own mind is enough to sustain you. That's not bitterness, that's power. That's when you stop searching and start building. That's when every day becomes a dialogue between you and your future self. Not you and her, not you and them, just you and the man you're becoming. Brick by brick, scar by scar. Of course they'll misunderstand it, they'll mock it, whisper behind your back about how you must be lonely, miserable, unfulfilled, because they can't imagine surviving without constant emotional hand-holding. But you know something they don't. You've seen what happens when a man breaks through that dependency, when he learns to enjoy his own silence, when he learns to walk alone, not as punishment, but as purpose. You start noticing things. Your senses sharpen. Your time becomes sacred. You stop giving pieces of yourself away to anyone who smiles at you sweetly. You stop watering relationships that don't nourish your roots. You become selective, not because you're arrogant, but because you've tasted peace. And once you've tasted peace, you don't just hand your energy to chaos anymore. There's a fire that builds in that solitude, a quiet rebellion against mediocrity. You stop existing to be loved and start living to be legendary. Not in their eyes, but in your own. You don't need someone to call you handsome, special, worthy. You look in the mirror and you already know. Not because someone told you, but because you've faced your darkness, your emptiness, your silence, and you survived it. And here's the real trick. When you no longer need someone, you finally become someone worth choosing. Not because you're desperate to be seen, but because you've already seen yourself. All of you, the man beneath the performance, the warrior beneath the smile, the storm beneath the skin. And while others spend their lives begging for love, you've been busy mastering solitude. Because you understand, the man who walks alone isn't lost. He's just walking a path most people are too afraid to follow. Funny thing about this world, everyone's obsessed with companionship. They parade around with their arms tangled in someone else's, convinced that love is the highest form of validation. But what if I told you that some men were never meant to be part of the parade? Some men were born to walk the alleyways while the rest dance in the spotlight. Not because they're broken, no, but because they're built differently, constructed in silence, tempered in solitude, and somewhere between all the empty rooms and quiet dinners, something inside them grows louder, stronger, something the noise of society tries so hard to drown out. You see, when a man spends too much time alone, people get suspicious. They start whispering things. Maybe he's damaged. Maybe he's antisocial. Maybe he's just weird. Because to them, being alone is a sign of failure. A man without a woman is a man without meaning, right? That's what they've been fed since they were children. Fairy tales, romance novels, Hollywood illusions. But in reality, that man, he's not missing something. He's dodged a trap most never escape. You learn things in silence that noise could never teach. You learn how to hear the voice inside your head clearly. You learn how to feel the weight of your thoughts without distraction. You notice how the world moves when you're not tangled in someone else's expectations. How every breath feels different when you're not adjusting your rhythm to someone else's heartbeat. And in that stillness, you begin to recognize a terrifying, liberating truth. You are complete. Not because someone filled your gaps, but because you explored them, sat with them, owned them. They'll say you're missing out on love, on companionship, on warmth. But what they'll never understand is that warmth doesn't always come from another body. Sometimes it comes from the fire you build within yourself. That silent, flickering flame that grows each time you refuse to beg for affection, each time you choose your peace over temporary comfort. And that fire, it doesn't just keep you warm, it shapes you. It becomes your armor, your edge, your defiance in a world obsessed with attachment. But they'll keep trying to fix you like you're broken glass instead of a sharpened blade. They'll throw pity your way, ask you if you're okay, recommend apps, setups, blind dates, like you're a problem waiting to be solved. But what they don't realize is, solitude is not your punishment, it's your privilege. You're not incomplete, you're just uninterested in trading your peace for someone else's chaos. And in that space, you begin to see what others miss. You see the games people play just to avoid loneliness, the facades, the compromises, the desperation disguised as romance. You start seeing how much people give away just to feel wanted, how many pieces they lose in exchange for a few crumbs of affection. But you don't barter like that anymore. You've tasted the freedom of your own company. You've learned how to dance with your shadows instead of running from them. You've found out that solitude doesn't make you less, it makes you more. You walk differently now. You speak differently. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't beg for attention. You don't crumble when someone leaves. Because you've already faced what most people fear the most, yourself. You've sat with the emptiness, tamed it, transformed it, and while others are still trying to find someone to complete them, you're busy building something no one can take away. Self-possession, discipline, clarity. The man who lives alone, without a girlfriend, without the safety net of constant affection, becomes something else entirely. Not cold, not detached, but untouchable in the best possible way. Because once you've been through the fire of your own solitude and came out walking, not crawling, the world stops being a place you need to fit into. It becomes a canvas, a stage, a battlefield. And you, my friend, are no longer the spectator waiting to be loved. You become the architect, the storm, the script. Tick-tock, tick-tock. That's the sound of a man slowly learning how to breathe without needing applause. You see, they don't tell you this in their little love songs and rom-coms, but a man who walks alone long enough, he becomes something else entirely. Not lonely, no, that's just what they call it to make themselves feel better. They call it lonely because they're afraid of it. But he knows better. He's not missing out on anything. He's just been given something rare. Space, silence, and most dangerously, perspective. A man without a girlfriend becomes the last honest mirror in a world of illusions. Everyone's chasing approval, connection, a soft hand to hold, something to numb the ache they haven't even dared to name. But he stares that ache right in the face. He names it, talks to it, dances with it. While others are out there covering their insecurities with lipstick kisses and forced laughter, he sits in the quiet, peeling back the layers of his soul like it's a game, a sick, beautiful game. You think he's numb? No. He feels everything, that's the problem. He sees through everything, too. The empty conversations, the fake smiles, the fragile egos wrapped in perfume and pretty packaging. He watches it all, like a spectator in a circus, sipping his coffee while the clowns juggle heartbreak and call it love. He's not bitter, he's just awake. He's not cold, he's just precise. He doesn't throw himself at every passing heart like a desperate poet. He observes, measures, decides, because when you've had enough time alone, you stop chasing love like a drug. You start treating it like a knife. You only hold it if you know how to bleed and still smile. They ask him, don't you get tired? Don't you crave someone? Don't you want to fall asleep to a voice other than your own? And he smiles, that crooked little smile that says everything without saying a word. Because what they don't understand is he already fell in love with the storm inside him. He already made peace with his own silence. He already learned how to make shadows his allies. So no, he doesn't crave, he doesn't chase, he chooses. And if he ever lets someone in, it won't be because he's incomplete. It'll be because he's overflowing and just wants to share the fire. But this makes people uncomfortable. A man who doesn't need? That's dangerous, because most relationships are built on mutual dependency, not mutual respect. But he's a glitch in the system. You can't bait him with lust, impress him with games, or guilt him into settling. He's not desperate for warmth. He is warmth. He doesn't cling. He doesn't beg. He doesn't text first just to feel important. He knows his worth, not because someone reminded him, but because he fought tooth and nail to build it when no one else clapped. They mistake his calm for arrogance, his distance for apathy. But oh, if they only knew the depth behind those quiet eyes, the fire behind that stillness. He's not avoiding love. He's just not fooled by its cheap imitations anymore. He's not hiding from intimacy. He just knows it's sacred, not transactional. While others are trading hearts like poker chips, he's sitting at his own table, writing a different kind of story, one where he is not the desperate lover, but the quiet storm, the unmoved force, the man who didn't need rescuing, didn't beg to be held, didn't fold for validation. He walks like a man who's seen what solitude does to a soul. It doesn't destroy you, it carves you. It sharpens your edges, deepens your voice, and teaches you how to stand where others collapse. It teaches you that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. That nights without a lover aren't a curse, they're classrooms. That pain isn't the enemy, it's the sculptor. And that the absence of a woman on your arm doesn't make you less of a man. It just means your hands are free to build something far more dangerous than love. Self-mastery. And then there's the most unsettling truth of all, the kind they never put in their books, the kind people whisper about but never dare say out loud, that maybe, just maybe, a man who walks alone is not broken. He's not cursed, not rejected by fate, not some unlucky soul in a romantic tragedy. No, he's evolved. He's crossed that invisible line where solitude isn't survival, it's supremacy. Because in a world addicted to attention, clinging to touch, hungry for validation, the man who doesn't flinch in silence becomes terrifying. You see, people don't understand what it does to you, being alone for that long. It's not about isolation, no. It's about alchemy. The kind of transformation that only happens when you strip away the noise, the distractions, the need to be needed. When you've lived enough days without anyone asking how your day was, you start asking better questions. When no one's there to cheer for your victories, you start redefining what victory even means. You learn how to celebrate in the dark, laugh with your scars, toast to your demons, and call it progress. But here's the fun part. When you reach this level, they don't know what to do with you anymore, because you don't fit the script. You don't panic over ghosted messages or cry over temporary affection. You're not swiping for someone to fill a void. You burned the void to ashes and danced in its smoke. And when they try to measure your worth by how many hearts you've held or how many dates you've collected, you just chuckle. Because you know the real game isn't how many people you've loved. It's how well you've survived without anyone. He's not lonely, he's observant. Not heartless, just selective. He doesn't entertain drama, not because he's boring, but because he's already seen what it costs. And he's not willing to bleed for someone who only knows how to take. He's tasted peace, and now chaos bores him. He doesn't need chaos disguised as passion. He doesn't need late-night texts followed by cold mornings. He doesn't need someone to complete him. He's not a puzzle. He's a finished piece. And if anyone walks into his life, they'd better come whole, or they'll only find themselves confused by his clarity. But here's where it really gets twisted. The world will try to shame him for it. They'll say things like, "You're too picky," or "You've built walls too high." But he just smirks, because those aren't walls, they're standards. And no, he won't lower them just to feel loved for a moment and empty forever, because the man who walks alone, he's learned that the wrong company costs more than solitude ever did. He's learned that silence doesn't betray you the way people do, that a quiet room is more honest than a fake promise, that a mirror will never lie to him the way sweet lips have. And maybe, just maybe, that's what scares them the most, that he doesn't flinch at being alone, that he doesn't crumble in the absence of affection, that he's grown so comfortable in his own skin, even love would have to knock twice just to be let in. 'Cause he knows now, love isn't supposed to save you. It's supposed to complement the masterpiece you've already become. And he's the artist and the canvas, the chaos and the order, the question and the answer. He's not waiting for a muse, he is one. They say men like him are rare, maybe. Or maybe most men just never dared to walk far enough into the silence to find this version of themselves. Maybe they got scared when the loneliness started to echo. Maybe they ran back to distractions, to comfort, to someone who would at least pretend to care. But he didn't. He stayed. He faced the echo. He embraced the void. And what he found on the other side wasn't loneliness. It was power. Quiet, steady, untouchable power. The kind of power that doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't chase. It just is. And that's what makes him dangerous.